The year was 1992, and graphic designer John Tobias and video game programmer Ed Boon were tasked by Midway Games in Chicago to create a fighting game that would rival Street Fighter II. In just 10 months, the two conceived, developed, and published an arcade cabinet game called Mortal Kombat. Utilizing blood and gory finishing moves called fatalities, Mortal Kombat quickly became a sensation. Once the game was released onto the consoles of the early 1990s, it sold millions of copies. In fact, it made over $300 million in 1993 alone, surpassing the global box office gross of that year's most successful film, Jurassic Park. Based on this success, producer Lawrence Kasanoff became interested in producing a movie version of the game. He eventually gained the movie rights from Midway Games and immediately put the movie into production. With just an $18 million budget, it was filmed from August to December in 1994. It was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, a relative newcomer to Hollywood. This would be his first big budget studio film. Hailing from the UK, Anderson was noticed based off of his first film, Shopping, a low-budget and violent film about people who rob stores by crashing cars into storefronts. Released in August of 1995 by New Line Cinema, Mortal Kombat was the #1 movie in America for 3 straight weeks and ended up grossing a worldwide box office total of $124.7 million. Initially receiving mixed criticisms, the film has since been re-evaluated by critics and fans alike, and is now considered something of a cult classic. As several movies adapted from video games have been released since, Mortal Kombat is now respected as being one adaptation that stayed true to its source material while delivering an entertaining story with memorable characters, music, and action sequences. But you're here to find out what we thought of this movie. Did we think it was a flawless victory, or do we need to perform a fatality on this movie? So strap on your metal robot eye, make sure your palm-ejected snake rope is ready to go, and get ready to roar angrily at the sky several times, because you're about to hear Colin, Harris, and I punch and kick our way through the first film in the Mortal Kombat series, 1995's Paul W.S. Anderson classic, Mortal Kombat. This is a show about franchises. Video game movie franchises. You're listening to License to Watch.
Why in the world was this movie made?
This is a little fun trivia fact that I did not know that has nothing to do with anything. I read the other day that Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote the book Wise Guys and adapted it into the screenplay Goodfellas. So this is a book about Henry Hill, who was a mob informant who went into witness protection. So to write that book, he spent a lot of hours interviewing Henry Hill and, getting his life story and everything. What I didn't know was that Nicholas Pileggi's wife, Nora Ephron, was helping him do a lot of that research and was in most of those interviews. And when he wrote that novel, she was also writing a screenplay. And that screenplay came out as a movie just a few months before Goodfellas. And it was called My Blue Heaven. And it's basically just like the comedy version of Goodfellas, which I did not realize that. I knew that it was sort of like, a similar situation, but I didn't realize that it was actually like she was taking the same source material into a completely different direction. Now, here's the thing that I find even more interesting and amazing.
It became a franchise with My Green Heaven, My Yellow Heaven, all great films. Sorry.
No, it's way more interesting than that, which is just dumb. No, it's the original. They were originally going to cast Steve Martin as the uptight FBI guy in that movie, and the guy who they were going to have play the Italian gangster in Witness Protection, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who cannot not have an Austrian accent. And somehow they're going to have him play an Italian
I'm definitely not a gangster.
I was in the mob, you idiot!
So anyways, I thought that was really interesting. And also, so then when Arnold dropped out to do Kindergarten Cop, guess who they got to replace him? Danny DeVito, except they couldn't get Danny DeVito to do it because he didn't like it. So Danny DeVito said no. But I think that would have been the best cast. I think that actually would have been a much better movie with Steve Martin as the nerdy guy and Danny DeVito as the mobster in Witness Protection. Not that it was bad the way it is, but that would have been better.
That sounds like another alternate universe I'd like to live in. All right, so Harris, yeah, great. How did you find out all that information? You were just cruising IMDb.
I was watching My Blue Heaven, and decided to look it up a little bit. It's sort of at that Scrooge level of I remember it being better when I was younger, and it's not as good as I remember it, but it's still pretty good. It was still pretty entertaining. It's got a lot of good stuff. I love when he's in the. Scrooge is also has Carol Kane, but I love when he's walking through the grocery store and he picks her up and he's like, "It's dangerous for you to be around all this frozen food because you're gonna melt all this stuff." And she just her reaction's great. She just swoons and falls into his arms.
Do they play the song "My Blue Heaven" like a bunch of times in that movie?
They do. Actually, the score is one of the best things about it because it's got some original score and some just good kind of songs. They use that merengue song that they do for the dance sequence a lot too. Like that's actually how they close out the movie, but they use My Blue Heaven a couple of times as well.
Yeah, I've seen that movie and I saw it kind of recently, but for whatever reason it like went in one ear and out the other, and I don't remember really much of anything that happens other than that Steve Martin is in it.
You should have used your eyes instead of your ears.
So we are officially done talking about the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher Batman films, and now we are moving on to the latest and greatest thing, and that of course is the Mortal Kombat series of films. This, of course, is the first of our trilogy of two-fers when myself, Colin, and Harris will take turns picking movie series that consist of just 2 movies. We have yet to reveal what the other 2 are, but for now, we are starting strong with Mortal Kombat. This first film was released in 1995, and it is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who in this film is credited as just simply Paul Anderson. This is before the conflict of Paul Anderson directors.
Everyone's confused because their work is pretty similar, actually. So that's like a lot of times it's hard to tell. It's like, did Paul Thomas Anderson direct this video game adaptation, or was it Paul W.S. Anderson? I
was very confused when I saw that, and now it makes complete sense. That this directing choice makes very perfect sense.
Yeah.
I was reading in the trivia that once he changed it to Paul W.S. Anderson, then that sounds a little similar to Wes Anderson, so he now gets compared to Wes Anderson. So he left one problem and created it.
I got to tell you, Paul W.S. Anderson is making himself look really good with the company he's keeping in these comparisons. He's stepped it up a notch.
Right.
You know what, though? He's maintained a marriage with Mila Jovovich, so he gets a pass in my book.
Are they married?
There you go.
They're married. They have 2 kids together.
That also explains a lot. Okay.
That's why she keeps on getting sucked back into those Resident Evil movies.
I haven't seen enough evidence. I don't believe that it's not all the same man. I haven't seen the evidence.
Pictures or it didn't happen. That other voice you hear is our guest for this episode. That's our friend Chris Bashen. Chris is an LA-based actor, motion capture performer, and he is also the host of the NerdOutcast Podcast, which you can hear us on, talking about Predator.
Oh, yeah.
Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and also thank you for being on my show. I've gotten a lot of praise about our Predator episode, and I'm not going to kid you guys. The bar was set really low because it's Predator. I didn't expect us to really get that deep into the weeds about it, but my God, like we just went to town, and it was great.
We kind of had the opposite perspective. We were like, he's going to cover an entire franchise in just one episode? This is insane. How will you get it all in? But we did a pretty admirable job, I think.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. So thank you so much.
And for setting out the rule of no talking of Alien vs. Predator, we talked about Alien vs. Predator quite a bit.
Right. Yeah. We never talked about Kindergarten Cop, which is fine, but we did talk about Alien vs. Predator quite a bit. Well, those movies will get their due.
Yeah, that was your brother, right? Who
he was
bringing up. Yeah.
Well, wait.
I thought about trying to hijack this podcast by continuing to bring up Mortal Kombat the album, the music CD, which is
I had that CD.
quite
I
good.
had that CD.
Also, yeah, it's also a very good CD.
Yeah.
Ushered in the age of electronica, which we are still living in.
Yep.
As far as I know.
Do you mean specifically the soundtrack to this movie?
No, there's Mortal Kombat the album, which has songs like about each of the characters in the movie.
Yeah.
It's actually
you
like a
familiar
kind of
with it?
a show tune album where all the singers are singing in character. So they're like, you know,
It kind of is,
you know.
but it's like hard techno from mid '90s.
I'd like to believe that all the Scorpion and Sub-Zero characters singing just kind of sound muffled, like.
Yeah, but it's all very like it's crooning though. So it's
Well,
you
it's
know, I'm
so, like-
Scorpion, I'm a ninja.
No, it's like I have a story about this. Back when I lived at the warehouse, I like woke up one day and went in, and everyone is singing this song. Like they're all singing about Sub-Zero, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, did you guys just make up a song about Sub-Zero? And they're like, no, it's Mortal Kombat the album. And I'm like, how do you all know the words? And like, have you all just been listening to this song and singing it over and over again? And they're like, yeah. And this is like 6 people. They're just like, yeah, we're all singing this. And then they played it, and I was like, oh yeah.
And then the foreman came into
get
the
it.
warehouse and was like, "What are you guys doing? Get back to work!" And Colin had to drive a forklift again.
Damn, I knew we shouldn't live in a warehouse.
Yeah, I feel there's a story there we need to hear. But if you've explained it on a previous podcast, then we can just direct listeners to go to that.
I don't think he ever has, but if you know Colin, I think you can just fill in the blanks and be pretty close.
When you mentioned a warehouse, I wasn't surprised, Colin. So, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Well,
yeah.
that's what we called it. It was like supposed to be an industrial building in like the Jefferson and Crenshaw area, and it had been converted to a live work space. Before that, it had been converted to like an office, I guess, and then after that, it had been converted to a live work space. And then at the time I lived there, it was a combination Airbnb hotel and artist collective type of studio space. And so I had like 20 roommates at sometimes, you know, closer to 12, but sometimes closer to 20.
That story and more are all available in Colin's upcoming book, Places I Have Squatted.
I mean, I paid rent.
It also has an accompanying soundtrack CD, and each track is a place that he lived in character.
He sings as
He
them.
sings as that location.
I'm just a warehouse. All right, so Mortal Kombat. Obviously, you know, we all grew up playing the game, I imagine. Were you guys more Mortal Kombat guys or Street
This
Fighter
is the
guys?
question.
Or...
Yep.
Or are you dying on Tekken Hill with Colin?
Soul Calibur only.
Oh, sorry. We were a Street Fighter household, and it wasn't. I mean, we were really serious about our video games, and I think the reason we were a Street Fighter household is because Mortal Kombat. And I'm probably going to make some enemies here, but it's a game where you can just kind of button mash and still succeed. In fact, when I told my girlfriend we were doing Mortal Kombat, she was like, "Oh, I used to love that video game because I could play against people who played it all the time, and I could win just by mashing the buttons really hard," which is frustrating if you like being good at video games, to just get beat by anybody with the dumb luck and button mashing. And I've been playing one of the recent ones on my PS4, and it's still kind of the same thing. It's like the more I strategize and try to use moves and stuff, the worse I do. And if I just revert back to just mashing the buttons as much as possible, it works great.
See, but I always felt that way about Street Fighter, more so. I feel
don't
like
know.
Street Fighter is
I feel
very
like if
much
you know
like
how to
a
use
button
your
masher.
characters, and I don't know, if I was playing as Guile, you weren't even going to get close to me because I knew how to keep you at a distance, and you know.
I'm a Smash Brothers fan, so like growing up, we played both. Like we had Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and I like the games for very different reasons. Like I tend to agree with you, Harris. Like I think Mortal Kombat can kind of devolve into button mashing, and there is more finesse with it. Street Fighter, at least the early games, but I didn't care about the Street Fighter 2 characters as much, and something about the lore of Mortal Kombat like really fascinated me. I don't remember if the first game came with a comic book or if I just happened to find it, but I remember reading a Mortal Kombat comic book like at the same time as the game came out that just like really I thought was cool. Like I just thought
can't
the story
remember
was
who
so
released
great.
that comic book, but yeah, I remember that too. That was like a tie-in to the game. I don't know if it came with it or maybe that was like a special edition. But they did have
I remember that.
Yeah, they had a comic book that released, I think, right at or shortly after the game came out. It was a
Yeah.
big deal. Mortal Kombat was a big deal when it released.
Yes.
It was like hyped up. I
Oh, yeah.
remember that.
I remember it got into a lot of trouble because of the amount of violence that was in it, and it was the first game to have blood, I think. I also remember my parents being either clueless or nonchalant to the point where they just didn't care. But I would always be like, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can I have Mortal Kombat 2 for Super Nintendo?" And they'd be like, "Sure."
Yeah.
So yeah, good times. I remember playing it at sleepovers. See, for me, I don't know though. Actually, I guess I played them both in arcades. But I was gonna say Street Fighter was more of an arcade game, and Mortal Kombat was better at home. But I don't know. I remember like playing Mortal Kombat in the arcade too, and you'd like take your quarter and put it up on the rim there, and that meant like you were next in line.
Well, we were a Nintendo household too, and Nintendo didn't have the good. They had the better like functional version of the first Mortal Kombat, but it didn't have any blood in it, which was the whole point of the game. So I don't even know if we had it for the home. I think we only played it in the arcade.
It was a huge arcade hit. Like Midway Games was a huge arcade publisher, and that was definitely became a flagship for them very quickly, and then they drifted into consoles.
So were any of you guys not allowed to play the game, not because of the violence, but because combat is spelled with a C, and spelling mistakes
Because of spelling?
just cannot be tolerated in this household.
It's very frowned upon. Yeah. Well,
Just
I don't
tell
know
them-
about all that gore, and especially that K in the combat. It just doesn't make sense.
Just tell your
Just not
parents.
done.
Yeah, just tell your parents it's the German spelling of combat, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, no, well, go back to decapitating that woman.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm not allowed to play it. Why? Is it too violent? No, my mom says it's spelled wrong.
Is it weird that like I'm so used to playing these games and I'm so used to the spelling of it that when I see combat written the correct way, it seems wrong
Yep.
to me?
I'm right
Yes,
there
that's
with you.
weird.
Yep. Yep.
Like it doesn't look silly. Like the Mortal Kombat with the K like written out looks really aesthetically pleasing to me. It doesn't feel like a misspelling. It's like so intentional that it just works for me. Are you guys right there
No,
with me, or what?
I agree with you, and I've substituted K into other words like cat. I'm like, oh, cat with a K. I really dig that. I actually don't know the history of why it is MK, like why they chose that way. I guess like combat with the C just didn't look cool, but I
read there was two different stories. One was that they just sort of did it for a stylistic reason to make it not boring, and the other was that they couldn't get some copyright on Mortal Kombat with a C. There was some other game or some other property owned that, so they just changed it to a K. And then they stylized that by changing other things that normally have C's into K's in the Mortal Kombat universe. Now, my question is, in the heyday of your playing Mortal Kombat, were you ever like just doing fatalities just off the cuff? You know, you'd finish the game, you just do a fatality. Because in my mind, we like button mashed when we were playing. It was just like button mash, button mash, button mash. And then eventually somebody fell over. And that was the most disappointing thing, when you'd get somebody where they were like staggered and wobbling, and you were like jamming all these buttons in, and your guy's sitting there like jerking and punching and not doing anything, and then the dude just flops on his ass, and it's like, oh, that's the end of the game. But we would have to you would have to pick two players and fight against nobody with like the cheat sheet in your hand to do the fatality. Like if you actually wanted to see the fatalities or the babalities or the friendships or the whatever the other ones were.
Oh, well, this is what I was going to talk about when we were back on talking about actually playing the game when we were young. I wasn't allowed to get it. Like it was too violent or whatever. And it wasn't my money. So whatever, but all my friends had it and I played it at all their houses, and I was a big arcade kid. So I had played it many times in the arcade, but I was definitely one of the people who could button mash and win, but absolutely could never do a fatality, and tried so many times. And I think that I was not told how to do the fatalities because of that button masher label. I was othered in that sense among the Mortal Kombat players of the arcades of those days. I couldn't. don't tell him how to do the fatalities because he's going to try to button mash win. Yeah,
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
I think there's some irony in the fact that a game that can be so successful button mashing also requires some of the most precise button pressing to like get the full amount of it. You can't miss
hard.
That's why
It's so hard.
That's why I don't agree. I don't agree that Mortal Kombat was a button masher because for me there were so many moves that were very specific. I remember buying magazines and things like that, like to try and learn all the moves and I was the kid who like memorized the fatalities of the characters that I played with. And I remember back.
Yeah, you were the kid who wouldn't tell me what it was.
yeah. Fuck you. So in the early games, they only gave you like 1 or 2 seconds to pull off a fatality, and it was so frustrating as a kid if you like accidentally hit up on the joystick and the guy jumps in the air and like you're supposed to hold block and that would prevent him from going up. But like if you missed that, you knew you blew it, and it was like a whole quarter wasted or whatever.
Matt, you know you lost to button mashers when you were so good at all. That's all I'm saying is that like
not me,
in Street
son.
Fighter, the better player tended to win most of the time, and in Mortal Kombat, you could just, if you knew what buttons to mash, like always mash your jabs. Don't try to do like power kicks or do those at the end of the combos. But like you would accidentally end up throwing out some special moves just in the process of mashing all those buttons, and it could look totally intentional.
Maybe in the earlier games, but I think in Mortal Kombat 3 is when they introduced like combo moves, and you can like actually do like, a string of different things if you hit the right buttons correctly. Whereas the 1 and 2 maybe were more button masher. I'll give you that for the sake of this conversation.
There were special moves in the first 2, but I think you're right. It's been a long time since I've played that original trilogy, but I think the third game did introduce the combos with a K, I do believe.
I feel like I'm getting like a resurfacing of a memory of like playing at the arcade for a while and actually convincing like some older kid to tell me what the fatality was, and then not being able to do it, and then he was like, "Nothing gold can stay, pony boy."
Hey guys, it's Harris. I'm here with a very special guest, USA Today child film critic Danny Slasky, who is joining me to respond to some of the various threats that I've lobbed at him over the past few weeks. Danny, I have threatened on multiple occasions to find you and kick your ass. How do you respond?
It was very violent. It was a total attack against kids.
Whoa, Danny, let me just stop you right there. I haven't threatened kids in general at any time. I'm making very specific threats towards you.
I was actually a little bit scared, and I have never been scared like this before.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not, but for the record, I outweigh you by like 120 pounds. I could totally take you in a fight.
Fine.
And then I see on Twitter the other day that you're making fun of Colin's ride. It's not his fault that the only vehicle he can afford is a windowless van made entirely out of iced gingerbread.
All that type of stuff we're using to hurt kids and capture kids.
There's no evidence of that.
Definitely for kids.
There's no evidence of that. You don't have any proof of any of that. And despite your many unfounded accusations, I think even you would have to admit that License to Watch provides a valuable service. For only $1 a month, our Patreon account gives our listeners access to our in-depth analysis of movies like Total Recall, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Enter the Dragon, Commando, Rudy, Cliffhanger, Twister, and a bunch of other crap for only $1 a month. Come on, kid critic Danny Slasky. Where else can people get a deal like that other than www.patreon.com/L2W? That's www.patreon.com/L2W.
It's just not for younger kids.
For once you and I actually agree. The License to Watch Patreon account is definitely not for younger kids. Unless they can afford $1 a month. Danny, thanks for coming on and being such a good sport. And just to show that there are no hard feelings, I'm going to give you the last word. Tell the people what you think of the fine folks here at License to Watch.
Clowns.
Well, who is everybody's like go-to character?
Depends on the game.
Yeah.
I liked Sub-Zero, I think, or Raiden. I liked Raiden a lot, actually.
Yeah, I played Raiden a lot too. On the later games, I played Kung Lao, the guy with the hat. I liked him. He was my favorite, but in the early games, it was Raiden or Scorpion. But I felt like you had to be. To really get the most out of Scorpion, you had to be able to do that chain thing on command, and it was never something that I could do easily. I could like Raiden had the thing where he flew across the screen and electrified people, and that was really easy for me to do. and the Scorpion one, I think it was similar controls, but for some reason I could never get his chain throw to work when I needed it to.
Scorpion had that teleport where he would like teleport backwards and appear on the other side, which was like a pain in the ass.
And if you could do it good, you could like punch somebody in the back of the head, then punch somebody in the back of the head, then punch, like you could keep on going back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Scorpion was my guy because of that move.
Yes.
I think I like Jax in the later games. The metal arms guy.
Mm-hmm.
Jax was like,
he's good.
He seemed lame. He was like not a fun character to play as because he didn't have great moves or whatever. But he was somehow really easy to just like charge straight ahead and just punch people. Like you could just punch the hell out of everybody.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He was like a surprisingly powerful.
My
character.
guy in Mortal Kombat 3, the arcade, I remember always choosing a character named Cabal.
Oh yeah.
He could like they introduced running in Mortal Kombat 3. There was a run button.
Mm-hmm.
If you held that, you could like run across the screen. And he had a character where he had a move where he would like run really fast past you and you'd spin around and then he could like go up to you and do anything basically. And he had a sick combo move. I remember it was like a 13 hit combo or something.
Oh my god.
But yeah, he was my guy.
And did you ever play against somebody? I remember playing against people like, I think it was probably Mortal Kombat 3 where they introduced like, because they had the combo thing and they introduced that juggling effect where you could like get knocked into the air and get hit like 6 more times before you even hit the ground. And then maybe as soon as you got up, you'd start getting hit again. And I remember playing it, like I stopped playing in the arcade. I think I stopped playing at Mortal Kombat 3 just because I would play with people that were like, I wouldn't even get a shot in. Like I couldn't even stand up or land a punch before I'm being juggled. And like I'm just watching somebody else beat the hell out of me where I can't even, my guy isn't even like dead. He's just like on his feet because he's getting bounced around by fists.
Do any of you guys have like a particular memory of a place like Mortal Kombat playing in arcade is immediately like CC's Pizza to me, like CC's Pizza buffet. I don't think you guys had that. I don't know where Chris you're from, but CC's Pizza was like a pizza buffet where it's where you take a bunch of kids and you just like let them go.
That sounds amazing. I want to go there now.
It's like
For us,
Shakey's quality.
It was the movie theater. We had Showcase Cinema. It was like the 16 theater movie theater that they built in our town. It was really the best thing about our town was they built this massive 16 screen movie theater that was like the biggest in the state, and they had a pretty good arcade there. So we just used to hang out there and play all the time.
The movie theater to me is House of the Dead.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
For me, I had a place called Lenny's Pizza growing up that was like near my house. And it was just like a mom and pop, like pizza by the slice. There's like where I grew up, there's like pizza by the slice places on every corner pretty much. But this one had the arcade, and I think it had like a pinball machine too. Like I think it was the Twilight Zone pinball. I don't know if you guys ever played that one. But yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 they had, and then Mortal Kombat 3. They were like the first place to have that. I actually have a funny story. Me and my friend Tim Shannon, who I'll mention again later on this episode, we used to go there all the time and play. And we found out about Noob Saibot. He was like the secret character. I can't remember if it was MK2 or 3 where he was the like character you could fight against. But whichever game it was, the way you got him was you had to win 50 fights in a row. And so I remember we got like $15 or $20 worth of quarters like ready to go, and we were like, we're getting Noob Saibot today, friend. And so we just kept going. You had to beat the computer, I think, 50 times, and I kept going, just kept putting in quarters, kept doing it, and finally it was like the 49th match, and you lose or whatever, and the countdown starts coming on the screen, 10, 9, 8, and you have 10 seconds to put a quarter in. And I kept putting a quarter in, and for whatever reason, it just like wasn't accepting the quarter. And I started to panic and freak out. And I was like, "What the fuck? We came this far. How could this happen?" And 3, 2, 1, 0, game over. And I was like, "What happened?" So finally, I look at the quarter that it kept ejecting, and it was a nickel. I was like, How I think I started crying. I was like, how did this happen?
Yeah, I'm imagining that.
So
When they
close.
do the shot where like the guy's on his knees and the camera's overhead and it zooms out and spins and they're looking up towards the sky screaming, "No!"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kano.
So it was I can't remember. Was Noob Saibot the he was like a palette swapped sector or whatever the cyborg ninja was.
So like half the characters
No,
are palette swapped characters.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a palette swapped Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but he's all black.
Yeah.
So he looks like a shadow character.
And Reptile.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Smoke and Reptile and
I always like Smoke. But he was later.
He was also literally like Smoke would keep coming off his character sprite whenever he was on. It's like, God damn it, Smoke.
And he was probably a weed reference too, I assume. You got that.
I also remember at that same arcade at Lenny's Pizza, this
Alley.
guy came in and he was like the Snapple guy. Like he would come in and like deliver like Snapple and like refill the refrigerators with drinks, you know. And I remember he had like a jumpsuit on. He comes in and he's like, "Oh, do you mind if I play?" I'm like, "Sure." He puts a quarter in and he chooses Smoke, or he like can't remember if Smoke was like a playable character at that point or if you had to unlock him somehow. But however, he played Smoke and he like was playing and he won and it got to the fatality and he did that fatality where Smoke's like stomach opens up and a bunch of bombs all come out and then it just cuts to a picture of the world and the world explodes.
Yes.
And then he was like, "Peace, I'm out of here." I was like,
like,
what the
Snapple guy's
fuck?
the
I had never like
coolest.
seen that before.
The
Snapple guy.
Speaking of like, I know this is a little off topic, but speaking of arcades, did you ever have like go to an arcade where it's like a shooting game with like the little plastic guns you hold?
Yeah.
And like eventually the plastic on the plastic gun, after like years of pizza grease and whatever they use or don't use to clean off the pizza grease, becomes like a slick plastic instead of like the regular plastic. Do you remember that texture? It's so
foul.
like yeah, it's such a unique texture.
Yeah, I bet it didn't bother.
Do you guys remember the
Snapple guys.
Aerosmith game?
Yes.
Is that pinball?
That had a great. That
It
had
wasn't
like,
pinball.
No, it was one of
was
those
it?
things. It was a shooting.
It was
game.
one of
They had
those
little-
gun
yeah,
games,
They had
yeah.
little Uzis, and I think they were, if I'm not mistaken, you couldn't actually pick them up. They were like mounted to the thing, and you could just sort of
Yeah.
aim them. And you shot compact discs, Aerosmith CDs at
my
the bad
God.
guys.
You all had such better. So I grew up in Middle Tennessee in the 90s, which was a very conservative place to grow up. So like you mentioned like the arcades, and I remember an arcade at our skating ring, but I don't remember seeing Mortal Kombat. Like I didn't see Mortal Kombat in the arcade for like a full decade and a half later, because of where I lived. Like when I went to the arcade, we would play X-Men a lot. They had X-Men, which was great. Turtles,
one.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Yes,
of course.
that was a great
That
game.
that was like the go-to. My experience with Mortal Kombat was on consoles, and of course, like all the news footage that it generated from its
Because of the
violence.
devil.
Because of the devil.
was
It's the devil.
closely associated
You know,
with the devil.
you don't play Mortal Kombat and you don't play D&D. That's what you
Yeah.
do not do those two things.
This is a great way for you to be sacrificed by a cult.
Yes. Yes.
You remember when you were little and you had to leave the arcade and you would like say goodbye to the picture of April O'Neil?
Colin, we weren't all you, but it sounds like you had the important games though, because even with we had like a lot of different games, but I feel like if you had Ninja Turtles, you were doing okay because that was the big
Yeah.
one in our arcade too. That
Yep.
was always the huge arcade.
And The Simpsons.
Yeah,
The Simpsons was
Simpsons
a
was
favorite
was
of
basically
mine.
the same thing. Yeah.
If whatever arcade you walked into didn't have one of those two games, you really judged the quality of the arcade you were in.
Yep.
Totally.
Should we talk about this
All right,
movie?
so let's
Yep.
segue into the
I
movie.
remember this movie
Yeah.
this movie was a big deal.
It's almost like we're in a bit of a time crisis.
Oh,
Wow.
good one.
I feel like unlike a lot of video game adaptations, like Sonic the Hedgehog came out like 20 years too late. I feel like Mortal Kombat the movie hit at like the peak. It was like it literally came out as Mortal Kombat 3 was being released. I remember there's like a code hidden in the movie somewhere that if you use in Mortal Kombat 3, so I remember that tie-in. But like it came out at the right time. Mortal Kombat, like the new movie that's coming out, maybe you could argue that it's the right time for that because there's like, more modern Mortal Kombat games that are out now and pretty highly acclaimed.
I have
But
a theory about
I don't think anything I don't think anything will beat the original release of this movie. It was like so hyped. I mean, I was in 5th grade when it came out. It was like I was like the peak demographic. I was like the perfect demographic, I should say. It was just it was a time to be alive. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I remember kids like not even playing dodgeball in PE when the game had already started because they're talking about Mortal Kombat. You know, like they could get hit by a dodgeball out there. They're not being responsible. I have a theory about the new Mortal Kombat also.
Do you all, real quick, know if Mortal Kombat the movie came out before or after Street Fighter the movie?
After. I think like not. They were shooting at the same time. In fact, that's why they couldn't get Jean-Claude Van Damme to play Johnny Cage.
Okay.
Because he was already shooting Street Fighter.
Okay.
But it came out, I think, about 6 months after, something like that.
Okay.
I thought it was a year.
I thought it came out after, but I wasn't sure.
It might have been closer to a year. I just know that for me, being a huge Street Fighter fan, that was the movie that I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest movie ever. They got Jean-Claude Van Damme, they got Raul Julia, they got all these great people, this amazing cast. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. And
they got Chip from Batman Returns.
Yeah. God. And I remember walking out of that and thinking, oh my God, I think I have to still like this because of my loyalty to Street Fighter. And it was just objectively not a good movie. So I went into Mortal Kombat with very low expectations, which is probably why it has stuck in my head as a great video game adaptation for all these years, just because it had such a low bar to clear to impress me.
I was just gonna say, I'm in your camp, Harris. I grew up with Captain N, and then the Mario Brothers movie, so I did not have high hopes for video game movies. That's why I asked Street Fighter, because I thought I had seen Street Fighter before Mortal Kombat, and it also was horribly abysmal. So I remember just like seeing Mortal Kombat and just thinking that it's just not going to be good. There's just no way. Like, it's going to be good. It's going to be a video game movie good, which is not going to be that great. But no, I'm seeing the movie at the time. I thought it was really flippin' great.
I like how it doesn't try to be like a great movie. It just tries to be an adaptation of a video game. Like, it doesn't try to be like a great adaptation. It just tries to be a movie that is an adaptation of a video game. In a good way, you know?
And it stays pretty faithful, unlike Street Fighter that tried to incorporate all these other plot elements and probably didn't have the strongest origin story to work from because it is kind of all over the place with all the characters' motives and backgrounds and whatever.
They have the whole map.
Yeah, but they didn't do that. But they didn't do the fighting tournament thing, which sort of would ground it. And they just had to have people like organically fighting. And it turned into like an origin story for half of the characters. Whereas Mortal Kombat was like, listen, we're just giving you the movie version of what the video game is, you know? We're going to have all the main characters from the first game, a couple of elements from the second one, and we're just going to give you what you want.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat's story premise just naturally works for a film. It's like, oh, a tournament. Everyone's got to fight to save the world. Okay, great. Where's my Smash Brothers movie?
I was going to say that the legacy of this movie is that, you know, when it came out, I think, you know, kids loved it, but I think critics didn't really, you know, think it was great. I think it had something like a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes or something based on all the original reviews. But as time has gone by, it's become sort of a cult classic, and it's now, in retrospect, looked back on as a movie that was very like true to the game's story, and it was authentic in that it kept so many elements from the game and had a lot of fan service and stuff like that, whereas a lot of movies since then and before didn't really do that, like the Street Fighter movie we're talking about, or the Super Mario
song
Brothers.
Was so iconic. It had huge popularity for like the entire rest of the 90s.
It really did sort of open up electronic music to like the masses in a lot of ways.
I remember trying to find that song. This is like pre-internet, and so you couldn't just look up what the name of the song was. I remember going to like Sam Goody and like all these other like Tower Records. I don't know if you guys had that. Like all these record stores trying to find, asking the guy at the counter, like, do you have the Mortal Kombat song? And like him not knowing what the hell I'm talking about. Finally, somehow I was directed to the Jock Jams CD. Do you guys remember Jock Jams?
Of course.
There was a song on there that kind of sounded like it, and I bought the album and then quickly realized it was not the Mortal Kombat song. but I still love that fucking album. Jock Jam.
Are you talking about the intro song, Colin? Like the song that just like smacks you in the face when the movie starts up?
Yes.
So I two things about that song in prep for this podcast. Mortal Kombat is not the first, but one of the early games that used voice samples, and I thought it was brilliant to put those voice samples or something close to them in the game or into the soundtrack with like literally just rattling off the names of the characters like they do in the game. Like I thought that was such a smart hook for anyone who is a fan of the game. And I think this is one of those cases where the song is so good, it actually elevates the movie above what it probably would actually be. Like that song, like I think if the song was not with this movie, it would still be a generally okay movie, but it would not be as remembered.
100%. Let's quickly go around and just talk about maybe if we have any fun stories about the first time we saw this movie, or maybe a time you watched it with a bunch of friends or something, like some sort of personal touch story, because I've got one. I don't know if anybody else does. I might have even told it on this podcast before. In fact, I think I did. But okay, I'll lead us off. Yeah, so my friend Tim Shannon, who I mentioned earlier, him and I were so pumped. We were huge fans of the game. We were like arcade monkeys who would just hang out and play the game constantly. We were so excited for this movie that obviously we couldn't see it on a Friday night when it released because we were too young. So we did the next best thing. We went to see it at like 10 a.m. on a Saturday. And we went to the mall movie theater to see it. And I just remember loving it so much that we just like hid in the bathroom at the end of the movie and then came out and went back into the same theater and sat there and just watched. I think we watched it 4 or 5 times in the same day. Just sat there and just kept watching it. And we like skipped meals. Like we didn't care. We just loved it so much. And I think after seeing it like a bunch of times, we snuck into Hackers, which was also playing in the theater next door. And I just remember that Hackers plays that same song that plays at the end of this movie. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the song that plays right before Shao Kahn appears. That song is also in Hackers. I don't know. I'll play it later in post.
Yeah, the song in the end when you think everything's cool until the Emperor shows up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's my story.
I don't remember specifically seeing this movie, but I'm sure I saw it in the theaters. I would have been like a freshman in high school or something like that. And I think after the disappointment of Street Fighter, I don't think I was in any hurry to see it. I was like, the better game had a shitty movie, so I'm not expecting much of the game that I don't like as much. And probably went with my friends. And I just remember walking out, and I think, at least among the guys that were there, like the critical consensus was, wow, this nailed it. Like this is like one of the greatest movies ever. Just because it was just, it had all the elements of the sound. The soundtrack was great, obviously, for what it was. But also just the production design I thought was amazing. Like it was impressive even then to see the scope and the scale of what they were able to do, and sort of see them bring the game to life, I think in an authentic way that paid off what we were hoping for, So it was just I remember it being very satisfying and just really like being impressed by the fight choreography and everything else and just thinking it was, top notch all the way.
I don't remember the first time I saw it. I've seen it a lot of times. I do know that I'm pretty sure I got the DVD at some point back in the early 2000s out of the $5 bin where you rummage through the bin, and it was so upsetting to find that it was only worth $5 because that was wrong, but I still bought it, obviously, and watched it. The main thing I remember is that in the video game itself, I like didn't even realize Johnny Cage was in it, and Johnny Cage, after seeing the movie, like immediately became my favorite character.
My biggest memory of the movie actually happened like a decade after the movie came out. As Matt already mentioned, I work in the performance capture industry, and I have done a lot of motion capture with NetherRealm Studios, which was formerly Midway Games. And the very first game I worked on was Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, which did not do very well, but led to the Injustice series, which did do very well. But I remember going into their studio for the very first time, and they have this huge hallway once you get past the front desk. And in this hallway, on each side, they have every version of every game they've ever made, including international versions, just kind of in these huge glass cases and like game awards. And, it's like a very extravagant hallway. And on pedestals, they have props from like the first Mortal Kombat game and stuff like that. But they also have Goro's head from the movie sitting on a pedestal.
No.
And the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's Goro's head. Like I couldn't stop
They killed him.
I couldn't stop looking at it. Like it's the animatronic head. Like there it is. And I like completely like fanboy nerded out. And like anytime I would walk through that hallway, I would just like stare at the head and I'd just be like, oh my God, it's Goro's head. And they'd be like, Chris, we gotta go work. Come on. Like it's too much. But it was such a cool little like piece of like gaming movie history to see. Yeah. So I can't wait to talk about Goro.
Well, let's talk about our most recent viewing of this movie.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting that his head attracted you so much. I would think his arms would have more pull.
Here we go.
Wow.
Colin, before we get into the movie, are you summarizing? Should we summarize this plot?
Okay.
Get
we're
this
like
intensely
pretty
detailed
deep into
and
the podcast already, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, you think you get out of it just because we haven't done it yet?
That's what I really was thinking. That I legitimately was thinking that right now. I was like, I'm not doing it now. We're
Wrong.
deep. Wrong. All right. Let me know when to start.
All right. You ready, Colin?
Yes.
Go.
Okay, it starts out with Liu Kang. He's dreaming about his brother being killed by Shang Tsung, and Shang Tsung's like, "You're next. I'm gonna take your soul." Then we see Sonya Blade, and she's trying to get Kano because she just hates that fucking Kano guy, and she's got a big old shotgun, and it's very shiny and long. And then she almost finds Kano, but she doesn't get him, and some guy's like, "There's only one way to find him, and you got to go to the tournament." Then we go to Johnny Cage, and Johnny Cage is like, "Oh, I'm doing my movie, and like I'm good at this movie, and like kicking ass in the movies." And then he gets frustrated because it's not working right. And then he sees some guy that he knows that I guess is like his teacher or whatever, and that guy's like, "You got to go to the tournament." And then it turns out that guy was actually Shang Tsung because he stole that guy's soul and used his appearance. And so they end up, and then Liu Kang goes to his old, troop of monks, and they're like, "You're the chosen one." And he's like, "I don't believe it." And then Raiden, God of Thunder, shows up, and he's like, "You're the chosen one, but you're not ready, but you should be ready, so let's go." And so they all get on a big boat. Raiden shows back up. He's like, "You're the good guys." Shang Tsung is like, "I'm bad." And they end up going to an island, and they find out they're in a big fighting tournament, and they're in the 10th one. The Outworld has won 9 times in a row. If they win the 10th, Outworld takes over the world, and that's bad. So they got to save it. So then they do a bunch of fights. They find the Prince of Outworld. He's Goro. He's got 4 arms. Johnny Cage has to beat him. Liu Kang's really going after, Shang Tsung. And, of course, Sonya has got to get Kano. So they win, and it works out pretty well, I think. Oh, there's Reptile too, and he's like spying on Liu Kang because Liu Kang is like got a little weird romance going on with Katana, who is the princess, but she's really down with Earth. So it all works out in the end, except the Emperor comes to Earth, so they got a Mortal Kombat again, and then they play the song, and then the credits roll.
Wow, you missed quite a bit there for,
all right.
You spent
for
about
this
a
plot.
minute and a half on the first 25 minutes of the movie, and then just sort of and then they fight and the good guys win.
Yeah, that's like, but like after the first 25 minutes of the movie, it's like a series of fight scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After they get off the boat, it's a series of fight scenes.
Right,
Pretty
but
much.
then you didn't mention that they go to Outworld to chase Shang Tsung because he kidnaps Sonya and all that.
It was implied.
Anyways,
implied.
yes, good job, Colin. He lied to make Colin feel better.
Well, if I did like you guys and take an extra minute, I would have nailed it.
I can't really talk anymore since I did botch a couple of the Batman ones, but my last couple were good. I redeemed myself.
We were all good once.
Yeah.
Once.
I love the telegram that Liu Kang gets. Brother dead, come home. It's like, Jesus, I know they charge by the word, but, come on, guys. That is cold.
Brother dead.
I mean, their whole thing is very like, oh, you're the chosen one. He's like, I don't want to do that anymore. And they're like, you have to.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I guess that's Raiden.
Yeah.
What if all the legends were true? What legends?
What if this French guy is actually our Chinese god?
Yes, exactly.
Also,
Oh,
in case you didn't realize this was a game created by a bunch of white guys in Chicago, they did use a Japanese god of thunder for the Chinese god of whatever this temple is worshiping.
Christopher Lambert.
Yeah.
God.
I feel like a lot of the lore just isn't accurate.
No.
Like stuff is appropriated, misappropriated.
I feel like Outworld might not even exist.
I'm sure when they were making this shit up, they never expected this game to be for this lore to be so prized by so many people.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to
like they were
them
just-
for having an Asian lead and an Asian actor playing the main villain.
Played by actual Asians.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty rare for this era and this kind of thing. But that's about the only like Asian thing that they stuck to. Everything else in this movie, like all Scorpion, Sub-Zero, their backgrounds are that they are Asian guys. They are not in this movie. Raiden especially is wearing one of those rice patty hats. He's not Asian.
So I find Christopher Lambert is generally an odd casting choice for any movie, but I'm not extensive into his filmography. My wife, I was watching the movie the other day, and my wife like came in for 5 minutes, and she's just like, "Why is he whispering every line? Why is he whispering every line?" I was like,
he's
"I
doing
don't
the
know."
Batman voice.
He's doing the Batman voice before the Batman voice.
Yeah. That's kind of my feeling is like, I think to sum up what you're asking is like, hey, Christopher Lambert, what's the deal with him? Which is a good question. I think we've all asked at one time or another.
Like he's not bad. Whenever he shows up, I'm just like, how do you work? How did you do this? How did you do this?
How are you a famous actor who's in this movie? Why is this happening?
How are you opposite Sean Connery at one point in your career?
Yeah, is that the only thing he was known for up to this point? Was the Highlander?
No.
movies?
His big breakout was Tarzan. That was his like first huge role, was playing Tarzan in the. Who directed that movie? I can't remember, but it was a big movie. It was a big adaptation of Tarzan
From the 80s.
Yeah,
Oh.
and that broke him out. And then he was in a is it Luc Besson who did
When you say Tarzan, I think Phil Collins.
I do too. Yep.
well, that's fine. You can think that too, but it was called Tarzan: The Legend of Greystroke. And then he was in a movie called Subway that I think was Luc Besson.
Subway.
Gray Stroke?
Greystroke, it's the guy's
sounds
name.
horrible.
It's Tarzan's name.
Yeah, even I knew that.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Stupid.
I'm not a big Tarzan guy. I mean, I like it. I used to like it when I was younger. I was a big George of the Jungle guy, obviously. But eventually it was just like...
I feel like we should all go around
I
and
don't
talk
know,
about
I-
whether we're George of the Jungle guys or Tarzan guys. I feel like you can only be one. You got to pick a camp. What camp are you?
I was gonna say, can't you be both?
Can we both?
So he was. I think he was cast as Tarzan because he has that simian forehead and his eyes are a little too far apart, and there wasn't a lot of dialogue in that movie, and somehow it made him into a huge star. And then he just got to do like whatever. That led to him being cast as a Scotsman in Highlander, which is just like, yeah, sure, cast the guy who cannot even speak like plausible English without a French accent.
Yep. Sure.
Yeah, Highlander is dope.
Highlander is dope. You are not wrong.
Oh, but you know what? Who should we get for Ramirez? Oh yeah, obviously Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Nailed it.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Whoever was like, they should have had less drugs when they were casting Highlander. That's all I think.
But even as a kid, like watching Mortal Kombat, like all the characters, especially what is his name? Sorry, Shang Tsung, Kerry Takawa, I think is his name. I loved him. Raiden, I was like, why'd they get this guy? This is not okay. Sure, okay.
I feel the same way. I do think like there is like maybe we should talk about some of these performances because I think that
Yeah.
they're almost universally bad. You know, like almost all of them are.
Well, let's go through the characters and decide, if we think their performance is bad, good, acceptable,
All right.
what have you. So let's start with
Who are we
Liu
gonna start
Kang.
with?
Liu Kang is played by
All right.
Robin Shu, who was like,
He's good.
I'm guessing he's a martial arts guy. I'm guessing like a lot of the actors in this are just like martial arts experts who also act.
Yeah, he had a Hong Kong career before this. Interestingly enough, here's. Well, I'll save this for later. But anyways, yeah, I thought Robin Shu was passable.
Yeah.
He was the martial arts part of it. He was great, and I thought he was a good enough actor.
You are the first crew of people I've met who like Robin Shu. I meet a lot of people who do not like Liu Kang in this movie, who do not like him.
I like him
What's their
if for
beef?
any reason that he looks exactly like the Liu Kang from the
Oh,
game.
yeah.
Like they did a great job, and his hair is like feathered and on point in this movie.
Beautiful.
It's kind of a
Beautiful
nothing
hair.
part, so I sympathize with him. I feel like sometimes he actually does okay, and I feel like if they had given him slightly more to work with, he might have been better. But I'm not
think
going to hold it too much against him.
He also shares a lot of scenes with Shang Tsung, who again I think I will probably go on record and say is the best actor in this movie.
No, I'll second that.
I'm with you.
Tagawa.
I'm with you on that.
And when you pair them together, I think his weaknesses as an actor, or his lack of strength or experience, or whatever it is, because you just have Kerry Tagawa eating up every scene. I mean, he
Right.
just points to the camera and says, "Your soul is mine," and it works. It works.
Right, right. Oh, he is excellent. I think we might as well just talk about him. He nails it, and and he is probably the most qualified or the most experienced in terms of acting of all these people. He was in The Last Emperor for Bertolucci, and he had a lot of small parts and a lot of little things, both here and overseas. He was in a couple of Wesley Snipes movies, Art of War and Rising Sun. He's got that charisma, that little whatever it is that you just can't look away.
I think the fan base just loves him also because he reprises the role in Mortal Kombat 11. Like, it's his voice, it's his facial scan as Shang Tsung. Like, they got him, like 30 years later.
He's so good in this movie that he says flawless victory like 3 or 4 times, even when it's clearly not a flawless victory. But
We're actually flawless victories, but yeah.
but you just accept it because his delivery is so great.
Well, I got to chime in here. I'm the only one, to my knowledge, that has met him and talked to him multiple times. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but I worked on a project where I was a production assistant with some kind of unspecific duties, and one of them was just drive Kerry Tagawa like to and from set, which was in the desert. And just like, every once in a while, see if he's doing all right and like if he wants anything or whatever. And he was pretty cool. He was like a little aloof. He could have made more of an effort to get to know me, but I mean, like, anyone could really.
So you like George of the Jungle?
Yes, I do, Carrie.
That was you asking him, never him asking you.
No, he was actually really cool to be around. I mean, yeah, like I said, a little aloof, like a little bit eccentric, but not like
He might have been distracted
not
by
difficult.
working.
Yeah, of course he was working. Yeah, and like a couple times he wanted to do his own thing. He's like, "Oh, well, we're out in the desert, and like I'm not, actually like." On call for right now. I'm going to do a little photo shoot over here off to the side. And we were like, okay, yeah, that's chill, I guess. And some of the other cool things he did was he carries like a bunch of pictures of him from this movie and signs them "Your Soul
Nice.
is Mine" and hands them out to the
Nice.
whole crew, which is like just fucking cool.
That's great.
And he was really chill. He's like, yeah, I was in Mortal Kombat. Everybody knows me for that. And one of the cool things I got to say was like, yeah, but I know you did other stuff. Like I can't name them all right now, but I know you're pretty legit.
Yeah, he
whatever,
popped up in Lost in Space on Netflix, and I was like, oh my god, it's It's him. That's great.
That
Good
guy.
for
Yeah.
you. Good for
he's
you.
one of those actors.
Yeah.
Never bad to see him.
Two really cool things were one funny thing and one really cool thing. The weird funny thing was after talking to me and finding out that I was from Texas, he was really curious about Waco, specifically David Koresh, because he was just like, cults fascinate me. And I was like, okay, like, I mean, I remember it because, you know, I was like, however
you
old.
remember when they rescued you from the compound when the ATF ushered you out of the burning building.
Another warehouse story.
That was the warehouse he was talking about.
Yeah, I legit think he was hoping that that was my backstory, because that's what he wanted to know about. But the other cool thing was, in the film that they were making, he like cuts off some guy's head, and he picks it up and talks to it and then throws it aside. And like I said, I had a bunch of unspecific duties on this picture, so it was like, okay, he's gonna like throw the head. That's what Carrie wants to do in this scene. He's gonna just toss the head aside, and we need somebody to catch the head. It's a really expensive head. It's like, you know, from the makeup prop department that like, we got to return this head or it'll cost us like 10 grand or more. And somebody's got to catch the head. And I was like, okay, I'll catch the head. So I was just like crouching below him with a pillow, waiting for him to toss aside a fake decapitated head for several takes. And it was awesome.
Did you ever drop it?
No. Oh, I think I got a little dust on it once, but it hit the pillow first. So like it didn't get damaged.
Well, Colin, you might know Carrie Tagawa, but that Bridget Wilson, let me just tell you from experience, she is one hot piece of ace.
No, you don't.
Well, actually, a friend of mine and her, they got it on.
No, you didn't.
No, they didn't. No.
Just so you know, the listeners at home know, Matt did do that thing with his elbows.
Yeah,
When he said
did a little Chris Farley running. Got it on.
Bridget Wilson Sampras.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of her?
I think this is not one of her strongest performances, and I think I've only seen her in two things. So, oh no, wait, I just thought of a third thing she's in, but yeah, this is not one of her strongest performances.
What's the third thing?
She was Jennifer Love Hewitt's older sister in I Know What You Did Last Summer.
She, Sarah Michelle Gellar's
yeah.
sister.
Oh yeah, right, Sarah Michelle.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. That makes more sense.
She's in Last Action Hero as Schwarzenegger's daughter.
Oh yeah, right.
I buy it.
Yes.
I buy it.
So she's better in literally everything else she did, I think.
To be
she's
fair,
not good at it.
she's not. Her character is also probably the most poorly written of all the characters. Like, she finishes her arc after Kano's fight. Like, she's done.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
That's like
I only trust one person in this world, and you're
Yeah.
talking to
that's
her.
like a half hour into the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of it, she's like, she gets forced into for like what's supposed to be a tough character, and in the game was the only female character in the first game, and was kind of, you know, a badass in her own kind of way. She is in the damsel in distress mode for most of this movie, which is kind of, it seems like a betrayal of the character a little bit.
she literally gets put into like a weird leather armor. I don't know what it's supposed to be at the
And
end.
I don't know
it's
what
like,
they
okay.
did to her hair
Nice
there.
dress.
but
Yeah.
I think it's very plausible that this was just like because they don't have proper hairdressing supplies in Outworld. So it's like they're just like sticking like gum, and they don't have combs. They're like combing her hair with
Tell that
with
to
like
Liu Kang.
petrified bugs.
Shang Tsung is just like teasing her hair out like
Yeah,
for
now
45
he's
minutes.
got like his hair.
This'll
looks
show
great. His
you.
hair is on point, and she's just like this frizzy mess. And it's just like I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is.
Your hair is mine.
I think part of the problem also is that so much of the character hinges on she wants revenge on Kano, and Kano is easily the weakest written character overall.
True.
He's
He's
But
just,
I'm,
yeah.
he was my second favorite actor in this movie, though. I thought like that guy kind of nailed that for a character that was just terrible. Like the scene he's got across from where he's eating across from Goro.
you don't get points for that.
Like the scene where he's eating the chicken across from Goro, and kind of just being oblivious and like, you know, and then Shang Tsung comes in and sort of gives him the business and puts him in his place. I thought that was great. I thought he played that really well. I just thought that guy had like something. That was, you know,
He
pretty
just plays
interesting.
it like a dummy. He's a big dummy the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
not
but
threatening.
I thought he kind of nailed that. You know, he nailed that big dummy aspect of the character.
Yeah, but she plays it like he's this ruthless killer who like killed her partner, and you know,
Yeah.
for all we know, it could have been an
Yeah.
accident. He seems so dumb.
And on top of all of that, the whole eye thing goes totally unexplained altogether.
Yep.
Which is like the one thing that you need.
He doesn't even shoot he doesn't even shoot
Yeah.
a laser at
He
any
needed
point.
an eye laser.
Yes.
Well, I think they established that it shoots lasers like in one of the later games. I don't think he shoots a laser. And correct me if I'm wrong. I know he throws knives.
I can't remember.
first
you might
game.
be right.
I
You
don't
might be right. He
know.
might not shoot a laser. I thought he did, but I think it's because, like you said, I think in the later games they added that.
I don't know. For a really cool looking character, this was a huge disappointment.
Well, I think that also relates to him being killed off so quickly. But that was kind of disappointing for me. Was I thought that for I thought one of the stronger actors in the thing, who was actually delivering his lines plausibly and was playing an entertaining character and kind of chewing the scenery in a fun way. I didn't like to see him getting killed off because I could have used a lot more of him and a lot less of like the Goro puppet, for instance, or Johnny Cage and Liu Kang's banter. Although I felt like, to your point earlier, Robin Shou was better playing off of Lyndon Ashby than he was playing off of Kerry Tagawa.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Let's talk about Lyndon Ashby. For one, I think he's up there. He's one of my favorites.
I was surprised how not bad he was.
Yeah, me too. Especially because like I don't know what happened to him after this movie. I don't know anything else that he's in. I don't know where they got this guy from. Yeah, but I think he holds his own as Johnny Cage. I buy it.
He almost seems like like an android or something. He just like appeared to do this and disappeared forever.
He was on Melrose Place.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's kind of that kind of
makes
sums
sense.
up his career in a way. Like he's still in things. He was in the Teen Wolf reboot a little while ago on Showtime. He still pops up. He's still acting. He's still working. And I think that's.
He's still playing a teenager.
Yes, he's still playing a team. No, like I think he's serviceable, and I think in this movie, serviceable puts you kind of ahead of the crowd.
The Johnny Cage in the movie also feels a little different from the game, and I don't know if I'm just like there've been so many games, so like these characters have like evolved so much over time. But I remember Johnny in the earlier games being more like braggadocious and cocksure and like really super egotistical, and the Johnny in the movie just wants to prove he's not a fake. Like he seems more earnest as a character. Like he just seems more he's just not as much of a jackass. There's times where Liu Kang comes off way more as a jackass than Johnny Cage does in the movie.
Like when he throws his luggage in the water.
Yeah.
I like it though. I like what he's doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
it
like
seems
it.
like they made an attempt to humanize him or to make him like less of a character that you hate.
Yeah,
And I think a little of it was probably that, like building up your second male lead and your white lead as kind of being one of a star on equal footing. So you couldn't have him just sort of hamming it up as like the asshole. You had to give him a lot of redemption. And really, it's kind of he has more of an arc than almost anybody else in the movie. Really.
Yeah.
I get Liu Kang sort of does, but Johnny Cage probably has more of an arc than Sonya.
Johnny Cage. Chris, we just watched Enter the Dragon on our Patreon show, and the plot. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but the plot of that movie or this movie like directly rips the plot of that movie. It's like these guys meet in Hong Kong, get on a boat, go to an island for a tournament, a fighting tournament, and like even the characters are kind of the same. And Johnny Cage very much is based off of what's the guy's name? John Saxon? Is that his name? Saxon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saxon.
He does, the same bit where he's got like a ton of luggage, all the suitcases.
Yep.
Like they do that same thing. Yeah. I don't know. I think I liked this. I think I like Johnny Cage better than Saxon's character, whose name I forget.
They
For sure.
They definitely based him like that's sort of the role he fills. I wonder if that's how much of it is because I think the original when they designed the game, they had obviously more Enter the Dragon is such an influential property. I think they had it in mind. I think originally it was supposed to be all like ninjas, and it was going to be like a ninja fighting tournament.
Big Trouble in Little China also really influenced Mortal Kombat.
Especially the giant rice patty hats.
Yeah, but also a big influence on.
When I was young, I used to think those hats were so cool, and like didn't really know why. I was just like, they're cool shapes.
They're great.
As a lover of shapes, I'm sure you
Yeah.
you enjoyed the hats very
Oh,
much.
You don't even
They
know
could be
how much I
triangles.
like
They
shapes.
could be circles. It depends on where you're standing.
You better not cut this out.
There is this one huge moment of cheese with Johnny Cage, like near the end of the movie when he's like, Art, his friend. It's not even his friend. Like he has this really strong emotional reaction to this guy who we don't really know very well get
Right.
killed by Goro, and then he's like, Sonya, I'm doing this so it doesn't happen to you, and it's like, she's not your wife, like like sure, but like she suddenly.
But he's sexually
like,
attracted to her.
like suddenly emotionally everybody's like super important to everybody else.
As the hot blonde girl here, I feel a little bit like we're gonna hook up at some point. So I need to protect my investment. I just want you to understand that this is about you. Yeah, he was actually the character in the video game was based on Jean-Claude Van Damme in terms of like his fighting style and everything, which is why he does the splits in the video game for his nut punch move, because they were basically just like taking Jean-Claude Van Damme moves and also the Jean-Claude Van Damme's famous ego, which is why they were really hoping to get him to play the part in the movie.
I think like all my favorite fight scenes are
Yeah.
him. I think be it like killing Goro, because I'm so tired of Goro looking at the sky and yelling. So fucking tired of it at that point. And that he hits him in the nuts and then tosses him off a mountain is great. And then he gets the scorpion fight, which is like really cool. And like it hits at a really good point in the movie pacing wise, the scorpion fight, where it's just like, oh, we're fucking in it now,
Yeah. I think we can all agree that the scorpion fight does anybody have a favorite fight that isn't the scorpion fight?
I kind of have a hot take here. Maybe it's just because I finished watching Enter the Dragon and I thought the fights in that were really cool and like hard hitting, and like you could feel all of Bruce Lee's like kicks and everything, and they show him in slow motion and a lot of that. And I don't know, I mean, I haven't seen this movie in a long time and just coming right from Enter the Dragon, but I really felt like the fight scenes in this movie were not that impressive. I remembered that the Scorpion one was my favorite one, and it's, for me, a lot of what makes it cool is the cool Fear Factory song that they're playing in the background and the change of location into that weird like stick hell.
The scaffolding place, yeah, and that's where the fight actually gets good. That's where like you actually see some good wire work and stunts and stuff. Whereas the stuff in the forest,
I love the first.
The forest
setting, though.
cinematography is so cool.
We'll get into the cinematography. I think there's a lot of great shots and things going on in this movie, but I guess we're talking about the fights now. And yeah, that's sort of my take, is that I was unimpressed by the fight scenes. I mean, there's like good bits here and there, but overall, I never, like nowadays, I feel like you watch martial arts movies or, what's that one? Ong Bak. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
Oh yeah, that's
But
great.
like you watch those fights and you're like, oh my God, the stuff looks so real and so hard hitting, where I feel like this is a little like sugar coated. And it was less about the fights and just more of like the outcome of the fights.
Sure. Chris, you have a hot take?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I think I go back and forth. Sometimes I think it's the Scorpion Johnny Cage fight, and sometimes I think it's the Liu Kang reptile fight. Like I go back and forth between those.
I was going to
those
nominate
two. That reptile fight near the end. It's not a fear rock song. It's like some heavy techno thing that just kicks in and just stays on. But their fight all throughout that dilapidated temple like goes back and forth and is really just fun. Like it looks painful.
Plus the bicycle kick.
Yes, the bicycle kick. Now, having watched the movie again, it makes no sense. Why does Liu Kang fight him and Johnny Cage just stands there?
Okay, so I think I can clear all this up.
Please do.
And I think I can address everything
Please
you guys
do.
have been saying.
Thank you.
I was going to say that the fight that I like the most after the Scorpion fight is I really like the fight at the end between Shang Tsung and Liu Kang. I like at the beginning where nobody even lands a punch for a while. They're just sort of swinging at each other and blocking and, sort of matching blow for blow. And I think it gets a little lame at the end where it sort of leans on the supernatural elements and stuff like that. But I think that's a pretty decent fight as well. And I agree, the reptile one is good too. You know what all three of those fights have in common? The reptile part in the factory and the Shang Tsung fight and the second part of the Scorpion fight where they're in scaffoldings.
Locations that can't really exist.
Oh, yeah, that. But also, those were all done in reshoots, and the fight choreography was done by Robin Shou, who had worked in Hong Kong and had experience with wire work and stuff like that, and actual, like, Hong Kong stuntmen, and, you know, where they land a lot of the kicks to make it look real and stuff like that. Like, they feel like if you don't break a couple of ribs, you're not really in it. And so they went back at the end because the early test screenings, the audience was saying they loved it, but they didn't think there was enough fighting in this fighting movie. And originally, Reptile, when he pushes the lizard guy into that statue, that's the end of it. The statue eats the lizard guy and he dies. And originally, the fight in the woods with Scorpion ends in the woods. He kills Scorpion somehow in the trees, and it doesn't go into the second location. So they added those two reshoots, and they reshot some of the Shang Tsung stuff, and that was all choreographed not by the original fight choreographer, who was a Hollywood guy, but by Robin Shou. So I think your point's really well made, Matt, that this is not at all what we have come to expect from a good kung fu action movie. And I remember seeing it as a kid and thinking it was great, and watching it now, it's like, no, not even close. This is shitty. But it is like one of the first movies one of the first American movies that used like wire work and had that element in it. So it was kind of pioneering in that way. And the best parts of the movie were very much like heavily influenced. You can see how if they had done this a few years later, they probably would have had it all be.
There's
like
great
that,
stagecraft in the fight scenes too, which
I was going to say that the fights are fun to watch still, but not for the martial arts aspect of it. You're watching it just for like who's on top kind of thing, you know. I'm not like clocking the punches and kicks and things like that, where like you do in Enter the Dragon or some other movies. But it's more of just like, okay, you're following the story of the fight, you know, if that makes any sense.
As far as like story of the fights, I think the Johnny Cage Goro story fight is fantastic, but I think its choreography is just abysmal. You know, like he doesn't like I don't know how you choreograph someone in that huge suit with 4 arms like realistically into anything filmable.
Yeah. Also, Goro in some scenes is like 8 feet tall, and in other scenes he's like 6 feet tall.
Yeah, and it's when we see the end of their fight in like a super, super wide where they're tiny. Yep. And it's hard to see, but it looks like Johnny Cage sort of cartwheel kicks him in the face, which doesn't even make sense. But that's like what beats this guy who nobody else can even land a punch on, is Johnny Cage. Like basically once they get out into that rock ledge, Johnny Cage's nut punch ambush that was his whole big strategy is sort of, that advantage is gone. And now he's just fighting this guy that's been decimating everybody, and somehow he manages to knock him off the cliff. And we don't even see it because we're like about 100 feet away.
Here's a question. You know how like cats, they use their tail to balance on things? Like, does having 4 arms actually give you better balance on a ledge? Isn't that a flawed strategy by Johnny Cage?
I don't know.
There?
I think it might give you worse balance.
Yeah, he's a little top heavy.
I've never had 4 arms, so I don't really know.
I've never had
his center of gravity is fucked up. We know that.
I don't even know how he runs around like that. Like, I don't even know how he moves.
To be fair, the Goro in the games is like squatter and wider, and the Goro in the movie is like super tall, so he seems at a disadvantage being so like.
All right, we're getting into the puppetry here. I know this is a hot topic that we all want to discuss, so let's get into Goro talk, please.
Please.
So, I mean, I know you guys seem to all be in alignment here, but I, for one, was impressed. You know, watching it, I guess like. I am a hater of all things CGI. I see the trailer for the new Mortal Kombat coming out, and I see that CGI Goro, and it's like, you know, getting me not really excited. And then I just see this Goro. You know, I haven't watched this movie in a long time, like I said earlier, and I was just really impressed with the facial movements. Like, I believe him when he's speaking. There were like 1 or 2 parts where the mouth didn't like line up exactly, but for the most part, it was pretty damn good. And his body, like, it's all real. Everything in every shot, like even in like the medium shots that are like, you know, not as wide as the one Harris was talking about, but it's not like a close up. When he's moving around in the ring and stuff, like, it looks great. It looks so real to me. And
I know a lot of people have skin that looks like it's made out of worn out footballs.
Well, I mean, he is not of this world. Yeah, I'm not like judging his skin.
True.
Yeah,
I don't see skin color.
Football world, Colin.
He's half dragon.
Oh,
He's part dragon.
Yeah, part dragon and part
That's a
football.
thing.
He's part dragon,
pigskin.
part football.
Like the old ones
Yeah,
from
no,
the 20s.
I didn't chime in on the text thread earlier, but I am on Team Matt on this one. I was really impressed with the Goro thing too. I kept on like thinking like, how do they do that? Are those actors in the suit? And like, I knew it was a puppet for part of it, but I think it's a puppet for all of it. Right?
This movie,
and it just looks.
this
really
movie
impressive.
came at the height of animatronic puppetry. Before this, we had Jurassic Park. We had like Chucky the doll, the aliens, things like that. Like this is sort of like the year right before they just chuck. Puppetry.
It's also the birth of like CGI, which is you see them both in this
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
And I got to tell you, even like Scorpion's little snake thing that comes out of its hand looks shitty.
Reptile.
Reptile looks shitty. It all just looks shitty. And then you look at the Goro and you're like, yeah, I know it looks fake, but it looks so much realer than the other fake shit.
All right. I mean, kind of fair, I guess, but you guys like already are really, really predispositioned to liking practical effects over digital effects. And like, it's kind of like one of those situations where you already like practical effects so much that you can't accept the fact that some of them could be bad. You know, it's kind of like when you like, it's kind of like those people that are like, like, I generally think all cops are good. It's like, well, you're gonna have to accept that some cops are bad. Like
I see bad practical effects all the time. I just tend to think they're better than bad CGI like digital effects.
Colin, do you think Yoda and the alien practical effects still hold up, like from Empire Strikes Back and Aliens?
It's
okay.
See, that's weird because I think Yoda doesn't.
Yeah.
Like the Yoda puppet
You
from
don't think Yoda
the
does?
Yoda puppet from the first from Empire Strikes Back looks like a hand. puppet.
Like I think this movie,
to me.
what makes it stand out to me is that like a lot of times you can kind of figure out how they do it. Like let's say you only saw Goro like from the waist up all the time, then you're like, okay, it's probably like a regular guy's legs and he's holding this big like animatronic or something. But I mean, there's so many shots where you see him full body moving around, walking, all four arms moving at the same time, face moving, eyes, like chin.
I couldn't figure out how they did some. Yeah, there were several shots in this movie that I have no idea how they.
It's
pulled
incredible.
Well, okay, but also he does the exact same gesture over and over and over again.
He's proud.
Yes.
He's a proud boy.
Like his emotional expressions as a puppet are pretty limited, so there's a lot of like
They're limited to all the
straight up
expressions the Arnold puppet face has when it gets blasted out into Mars.
You guys are not totally just like speaking, just total whack bullshit over here. It's just this particular character, like what you're saying, this is the absolute height of animatronics. Like I expect a little bit better than this, and maybe it is because the character is just so annoying. But I think when I'm evaluating if an animatronic is good, if it does the exact same gesture over and over again, like that is not good.
I don't think he's as good as the Turtles movies, which came out before this. Like the Turtles themselves get better over time with their animatronics. Toka and Rezar, I forget the second one's name. In the second movie have like a lot of like little articulations that look really good. They don't have to speak very much, but their articulations are great. Goro, man, it's hard when you start like trying to animatronic a human face. I think that's why like Jabba works.
Guys,
really well,
hear me out.
Alien.
Hear me out. I'm watching the Goro and Johnny Cage fight right now on my computer, and Goro is speaking to Johnny Cage, and obviously it's muted, but I can almost read his lips. Like that's how good his lip movements are. Like he's saying words.
The face is probably the best part of it, and that is that.
The Ninja Turtles are a little more like flappy.
The Turtles are more flappy. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fun. Let's move on to something else. This has been Colin being wrong, brought to you by Lucky Blarms.
Wrong.
That's so mean. I didn't do that. I like specifically went out of my way to say I'm not gonna just say you're absolutely wrong.
He was vulnerable.
And then Harris
He was
comes back like
vulnerable.
Colin is absolutely wrong.
Wrong.
Just when you offer your hand out in friendship, that's when I come off the top rope with an elbow.
Friendship.
Wrong.
Oh, speaking of top rope with an elbow. How come you guys didn't respond to that thing I said about Jude Lawless earlier, which I thought was hilarious?
Oh my God. Are you bringing up puns that you made before the show started?
Yes.
Oh boy.
I would say it's bringing
What
it
else can
back
we
full
talk about
circle,
here?
but it's like bringing it back no circle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bring it back
plain
to something
zero.
we haven't even-
Plain zero.
We haven't gotten.
Did we talk about everything? Was that
We haven't even finished talking about the cast. We didn't even mention Talisa Soto as Katana.
Ah, a Bond girl.
Oh yeah.
Yep,
This-
a Bond girl who married Benjamin Bratt and retired like 20 years ago.
Yeah. And actually,
that was like
Carrie Tagawa is from the same Bond movie as her, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
We also didn't mention that the person that actually started this movie as Sonya Blade and didn't finish it. Why am I blanking on her name?
Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz. Yeah.
Oh, really? That would have been bad.
Really?
broke her wrist in training for this. And
I don't think that would have
Aw,
been
man.
good. I like Cameron Diaz, but I don't think that would.
I can't. see
However,
her
this is like
as Sonya
Cameron
Blade.
Diaz in the same era of The Mask, which is like peak
Yeah.
Cameron Diaz. I don't know if you guys have
Yes,
seen The
of
Mask
course.
lately, but
Yep.
Been a long
she would have
time.
brought a lot to this movie. Let's just say that.
I like what Katana did. I like her kind of low key, enigmatic kind of thing. One thing we didn't mention, Christopher Lambert, could he have a wig that looked more like a wig?
That wasn't his real hair.
It was animatronic hair.
Yeah. The way they got the
That was
movements and the
puppetry
wind,
department got on that
it's
wig.
great.
That's the best VFX in the movie.
I will say his Raiden, he has comedy bits as Raiden, which for me work. I'm like, you know what? If this is not my Raiden, that's fine. You do what you want to do, and like when he sees all the guys, he's like, "What are you gonna do about them?" And he's like, and he kind of leads them through, or he laughs at them when he's like, you have to save billions of lives. Ha ha ha. Sorry.
Sorry.
You
Yeah.
know?
Are they trying to make "I don't think so" a catchphrase though? It's like he says it like 4 times. All right, it's not really catching.
How did you know we were gonna win, Raiden? I didn't. I'm insane.
I'm just a janitor.
I'm insane.
I mean, this movie's plot is pretty minimal. Like, what else do we have left to cover before we head into our next
We could
segment?
talk about like the specifics of like what sets we liked. I don't know. I feel like there's so many. It went back and forth between me thinking like on the boat dock where they have that big fight, and I'm like, this is clearly just a soundstage somewhere because it just looks so.
Oh, the
I-
boat
Just like,
set.
okay,
Yeah,
just-
for sure.
There is one.
Yeah.
There is one set I want to talk about. It's when they go. It's after the reptile fight when they are walking towards Shang Tsung's tower in Outworld. There's this really long shot of them walking, like 3 city blocks of like just dilapidated Outworld.
I'm watching it
And,
right
like,
now.
There's this part where you see like lightning flash and it just goes down the street, and it's a big long shot of just exposition. And I remember I was watching a movie last night and I was like, wow, they built all of that for this like 3 lines of dialogue. Why did they do that?
It's just like downtown Detroit or something.
It is, yes, that's what I was thinking. I was like, is this Detroit? Where is this?
I thought that was a
I
miniature.
was wondering if some of that stuff was just like matte paintings, like post-production
I
stuff,
don't
because they do a
know.
lot of that compositing. And the only difference is if that was composited, it was the only compositing in this movie that wasn't fucking obvious.
It was-
'cause
yeah.
So much of it is really bad.
Well, then there
The
was.
the zoom on Sonya tied up in the tower.
Yes.
Where it like
Oh,
zooms from the
yeah.
outside
Yes,
up into the tower,
yes.
and then she's tied up there, and she looks like a background character in a Mortal Kombat game. Like that's how
Yeah.
fake it looks.
Harris, have you ever seen Paul Anderson's first movie, the one I mentioned earlier in the text? It's called Shopping.
No, I haven't.
I figured you of all people would have seen that. It sounds interesting. I don't know if you guys had read about it, but so he made one movie before this, and based on that, they thought he would be perfect to direct this movie.
To direct every bad video game movie for the next
20 years, yeah. He's
and all the ones he doesn't take, Yui Bowl is like, I got it.
yeah. So the movie is called Shopping, and it's about people who ram cars through storefronts and then go into the store, like essentially killing the people in the store and then going in and robbing the store. And it stars, I think it's Jude Law, is like one of his first films. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And I saw that it's streaming on, what did I say, Amazon or something.
See, Colin, if you had fucking waited,
Yeah, I
you
could
could
have
have
done my joke.
Yeah,
Matt,
Jude
remember
Lawless
when you
fun here.
wanted to move to UK for a year and then come back and be a pro wrestler called Jude Lawless?
There it is.
I'm editing this episode just so I can make sure that this all stays in, so it doesn't seem like that's organic at all.
Yeah.
Can't you see Matt pretending to be British and a wrestler and calling himself Jude Lawless? I would cast him as that easily. I think he would nail it. I want to see that movie.
I'll get you, Colin.
His signature move, the fish and chips.
The fish and chips.
You know what? That is something I appreciate about the Mortal Kombat movie is they just throw in game move after game move. You know, fatality, friendship, whatever it is. Like if you're familiar with the game, the pit.
Yeah, I like the random Johnny Cage friendship move where the autograph picture like floats to the ground.
That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
It's great.
The autograph picture.
And they worked in a Scorpion fatality too with the skull flamethrowing thing in the same thing. We haven't talked about Sub-Zero hardly at all.
Oh yeah, we haven't.
He's not used very well in the movie.
Use the element which brings life.
Semen? It gets to the end of the fight and he's like jacking off.
Sub-Zero's just like, what are you doing?
It's like, water. I meant water, you sicko. What's wrong with you? I like how she whispers it to him in the fight, but then she shows up at the end of the thing and like looks at him again.
And he hears it. He can remember it.
He hears it. He's like, the element.
That's just for the dumb kids in the audience. Like, oh, she meant water.
Exactly. I got a question about what's the Sub-Zero versus Rando guy at the beginning. Like, did that dude who's just the masked dude from the guards, was he aware of what he was facing? Like, did he know that he was fighting a magic ice ninja to the death?
He thought it was a reward.
Or did he think he was just like, it was like an exhibition sparring match with a regular guy?
He clearly works as like dining staff there, so how does he not know who Sub-Zero is? Like, he knows what's about to happen.
They should have shown his employee of the month photo on the wall like fall down after he died.
Yeah. It's like, they said give him a good show, so here it comes. All right. Holy shit.
Speaking of Sub-Zero and Scorpion, here's my beef. It's like, I love the way the masks look in the game. I feel like at least Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 like do a really good job of making their costumes look cool. But I feel like this movie and the new movie coming out especially, like the masks do not look cool. They don't look like a mask is what? You're concealing your face, right? I feel like those red guys, like that guy that got blown up in the Sub-Zero fight we were just talking about, they're wearing masks the way like ninjas would wear them, I feel like. You know, they're covering their nose and mouth, their eyes are popping out, and then the rest is like covering their hair. But in this movie, like for whatever reason, they have to make their masks like metal or like, I don't know what they're supposed to be made out of, but they look like they're intense, you know? And like Reptiles has like a little mouth on it, and Scorpions has like vents, it looks like, and I forget what Sub-Zero's looks like. But in the new movie, they look even worse. They're like huge, like coming out here like this. Like I just don't get the aesthetic of like what the masks are trying to achieve.
Well, forgive me if I'm wrong, but in the new movie, aren't they like, they have no shape whatsoever? They're just like flat sides. Like there's no shaping to it at all. It's just like a flat piece of whatever material it is, right? In the new movie?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like there's no detail. It's just like
cloth? Is it supposed to be cloth?
No,
It's
there's
not cloth,
detail.
it's
There's like
just-
too much detail. They add like
okay.
all these like design elements to it.
There's a little N94 on the side.
Oh yeah. Well, this is what I was gonna say, Harris, and Matt. When we were talking earlier, my theory of how they decided now was the right time for Mortal Kombat was they were like looking at people wearing masks because of COVID, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we still have this Mortal Kombat property. Let's pump out a
Masks
fucking
are
movie."
back, baby.
Yeah.
people will relate.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any thoughts on the masks. I think they're all fine. I mean, a mask is a mask. It's covering their mouths. So.
I mean, they're the only ones that have
agree
like
with you, but I
real
don't like the little-
costumes. Them and maybe
Yeah.
Raiden, you know.
I think they're just trying to add some detail to them, so they're not just like plain old. And also make them a little bit varied, because I know they did this in later games, but there are, in the video games, it makes sense to have just palette swapped versions of things. But I think they're just trying to give them some unique personality since it's a movie.
The costumes seem a little almost palette swapped for those two, and especially for Reptile. But I have to give it to Cary Tagawa to have like a really awesome leather trench coat that he wears. That leather trench coat is nice.
With three collars.
Yes, and he does not wear this in the game. He looks nothing like he does in the game, but it's fine. It doesn't matter because it looks great.
If I was him, I would have asked to keep that coat, and I'd probably just wear it out. Colin, did you ever see him in that coat?
Did you ever see him in that?
No, he did. Like, his little photo shoot thing was interesting. He got dressed in like a more kind of a traditional outfit and had like a spear, and he was like, it was very interesting.
So he always has a spear with him?
No, just for the photo shoot he wanted to do.
Oh, okay.
But he was carrying the spear all day on set that day.
You know what I feel like? I feel like Dirt Samurai should have been a real game character at some point. The guy that Liu Kang fights at the very end of all the guys that he fights before he fights Shang Tsung.
Oh, yeah.
Dirt Samurai.
I think Dirt Samurai would have been a pretty good addition to the game.
Matt, what if the mask? Have you ever seen where like kids who are really into Minecraft, they get like an object that has like the pixel, printed on it? You know what I'm talking about? Like they'll get one of those swords and it looks like the Minecraft sword. What if the what if the Sub-Zero mask is like a pixel mask printed onto the mask that he wears?
What if Sub-Zero is into Minecraft?
No, it's true. It's true to the original video game.
I guess so.
Yeah, sure. That could be it. What do you guys think of the ending? Or actually, before we get to the ending, I think another good element of this movie is the cinematography. Like, I was impressed with how many shots were memorable and stylistically cool. Even like right in the beginning, the Mortal Kombat symbol with all the fire and stuff, for the opening, for the title, that was great. And
the shots at the temple, like zooming into the temple and going up to the temple, some of the stuff on the beach when they're at the island looks all great. Yeah,
and they actually shot in Thailand, which is crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a scene where they're in a boat and Sonya is trying to call for backup, which whatever. And I'm like, oh, they're sailing in this river. Where are they? This is again 3 lines of dialogue, but they actually went out to this river and shot this one little part.
They were willing to go all out. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of impressive that this movie, I think the budget on this was 18 million.
Was that a lot for 95?
No, it wasn't at all. The other movies that came out then, we're looking at stuff like Die Hard with a Vengeance, which was almost $100 million. Apollo 13 was 50 million. GoldenEye was 80 million or something, obviously, or 60 million. Obviously, those are bigger movies. Batman Forever is another one that was but even smaller stuff like Leaving Las Vegas was, that's super small, but 12 Monkeys is sort of similar. That's 30 million, so I'm just impressed. I mean, a lot of that's going to salaries for more famous people and better actors, but it's kind of impressive that they were able to do all this location shooting, build all these pretty fancy, pretty elaborate, pretty giant sets, and all the costumes, and staff this up with competent actors for the most part. At an $18 million budget, and it made a lot of money too. So
What are the 3 things that they say at the end? He has to face your enemy, face yourself, and face your
greatest fear.
Greatest fear.
Greatest fear.
I like how face your enemy was a bunch of guys popping out of a hole that he had to fight. Face yourself, he was just okay, yeah, got that.
I'm good.
Yeah, it really is just I'm okay.
And then face your greatest fear was his brother. Yeah,
because he was scared of his little brother. And also that makes no sense, because why would Shang Tsung lure Liu Kang to the tournament by killing Chan, when he could have just left him in America, still believing it was all bullshit?
Like, don't call the solution, like, don't call the hero of Earth to the
The
tournament,
one guy,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. The one guy who can kill you, don't like piss him off and get him to join the tournament for some reason.
Maybe Johnny Cage was that good that he felt he had a little bit better chance against Liu.
That's why he decides he's going to fight everyone else first. He's like, oh, I'll fight the girl. Okay, I'll fight the actor. All right, fine. I'll fight the...
I wish we had a Johnny Cage Liu Kang fight in this movie.
Yeah. Well, that was my question. Is this a whack-ass tournament where, like, you have a couple of rounds and then people just start calling people out and choosing who they fight and you can have people go undefeated and still not win, and, you know, like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, also, in the Katana Liu Kang fight, it's confusing as to why and how it starts and why and how it just ends.
Well, and also in like the previous scene, Shang Tsung is like, they must not join forces, but they have a match tomorrow, so
yeah, and he's setting up all the matches. He's intentionally like plotting out who fights who, and he's like, well, definitely need to keep these people apart, except for during their fight tomorrow, where they were going to have hushed discussions far away from me.
Yeah, it's kind of like Enter the Dragon too, where there's like seemingly hundreds of people involved in this tournament, but like we only really see these three main characters fight, and then like the only time you see other people fight are when like the montage when Goro is just like fucking people up left and right.
You're forgetting the one guy, Johnny Cage's friend,
who
he met on the boat,
Mm-hmm.
but like
Greg,
clearly was
whatever
not
his name is.
established as one of the three mains.
Yeah.
I do like the black guy fighter, the black guy with he fights Liu Kang with the bow staff.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, the
it's,
bow
it's
staff.
I think it's the first fight of the tournament.
Yeah,
That fight.
and he like growls, like he has like a tiger growl or something. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah.
Although he has to do the hair whip to get his hair out of his face so many times. I'm like, dude, scrunchy, you know, like this is like a fight for your life. You might want to just, you know, tie that up.
He got drop kicked in the middle of the sternum so hard that it just like totally knocked him out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's all it takes with me too.
Yeah,
It's my,
it kinda
it's
goes
it
my
wouldn't
one
even
week-
take that
it's
much
like
for me.
It's like my kryptonite. If you just drop kick me hard in the sternum, I'm done.
Somehow
Wow.
that takes you down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
What
it's
a
like
pussy.
what we were talking about is like the fight scenes aren't that good, but a lot of times they have good endings, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's time to talk about the ending of the movie.
Good segue.
Yeah.
Segue.
Which the ending of the movie itself is a segue.
How do you guys
to a
feel about
sequel.
the Shao Kahn reveal and like how they wrap it up nicely right before that?
I would have been pissed if I was like Sonya. Like, what the fuck was the whole point of everything we just did?
Yeah.
So as a gamer, I loved that ending because I really liked Mortal Kombat 2 way more than Mortal Kombat. And I know like the first movie had elements of both of those games in it, but I was really excited, especially with Mortal Kombat 3 coming out, of like potentially seeing a sequel with like ninjas and cyborgs and, you know, Sindel and all these characters.
Expanding the world, yeah.
I will not lie to you. I don't know if I have seen Mortal Kombat Annihilation and just burned it from my memory, or if I have never seen it, because I have no recollection of that film.
And
None
you are a better
whatsoever.
man for it. Let's just
Yeah.
say that.
I've seen it.
took
I
a
remember
couple-
very little.
It took a couple of years to come out, which is, I think, like, if people were excited by the teaser of a sequel at the end of this, then they had a little while to wait.
It was 2
and if
years.
they-
Came out 2 years
if
after.
they, two years later. But if they were like me and they were like, I kind of wanted this, like, I felt like I didn't need a cliffhanger at the end of this. I was sort of happy with everyone being happy, and it would have been so easy just to tag on that ending to the beginning of the next movie. And I felt like it made this movie suddenly go from very satisfying to feeling unfinished, especially because then you get the cheesy, I don't think so, and they all jump into their fighting stance in a row. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to get amped up for this, but like, I don't. I was like ready for like the ending of this movie, you know?
You're like, oh, I guess I'll go get more popcorn. All right.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Another 2 hours.
A lot of the structure of the whole movie is like taking little spaces and trying to build extreme hype in between them. Like every 5 minutes we need something that's extremely hype, okay?
I'm surprised they didn't bring out like some t-shirt cannons or something.
Yeah, I know, right?
Get up, get up.
Get up.
Give it up for Goro.
Play that one song. We haven't heard it in 7 minutes.
Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Guys, should we teach Chris how to play top 4?
Oh my god,
yes.
we can't do top 4 for this. They're all terrible. I
top
looked
4
at
of the
them.
Goro
all,
puppet?
Like everyone's top 4 is awful.
Well, I think the only person we could do top 4 for would have to be the director. He's the only person whose
that's
IMDb
interesting.
I didn't look at today.
Okay, are you running it?
I could run it. Yeah, I'll run it.
I want to do it.
You do?
I don't-
Okay.
You should. Yeah, you should do it, Colin, because you haven't done it
Hold
yet.
on. I'm gonna use the internet connection on my iPhone.
I don't
telephone.
think we need to know all the details.
So while Colin's looking that up, Chris, we play a game here called Top 4, where what we do is we guess an actor or director's top 4 movies that they are most known for according to IMDb. And if you know anything about IMDb, it's that they have a weird algorithm that doesn't make any sense. And so their top 4 movies could be anything.
This is gonna be great.
One of you three will decide the outcome of the tournament.
Oh, this is gonna
So,
be so good.
I have to guess. I have to throw out 4 movies Paul W.S.
Just
Anderson might be
one
known
at a
for.
time.
We're going to go one at a time. You take one guess, and then the next person goes, and we'll
And
tell
I
you.
think we should let you go first.
Okay. All right.
So, Colin, you got it. You got it up.
I'm set. I'm ready to go. Wait, no, this Grand Budapest Hotel. No, just kidding. I got it.
That's good.
All right, go ahead, Chris. For Paul W.S. Anderson, what are his top 4, or what is one of his top 4 movies that he's known for?
It has begun.
I will put Resident Evil into the ring.
That is incorrect.
Oh, okay.
How many Resident Evil movies are there?
There's
You guys know?
5?
4 or
7, I
5?
think.
Is it,
7?
Oh my God, are there
Too
7?
many.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, it could be a future franchise that we cover on this show. So
could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. Matt, you want to go or should I?
I'll go. I'll say AVP.
Fatality.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm going to go with the obvious one and say Mortal Kombat.
Outstanding.
You are correct, Harris. Mortal
Wow.
Kombat
What?
is the second one.
The second one. Wow. Back to Chris.
I don't know his other movies outside
There's
of
one that
these.
I would get that I watched recently and told Matt and Harris about, and they didn't.
Yeah, no, I don't know his filmography outside of what you have all now said. So,
You got to guess something.
Resident Evil 2.
You have to know the subtitle of it.
Do you? Oh, no, we're screwed.
Oh shit! I
Because
don't
I'm
know.
not sure which one is 2.
I don't know. Resident Evil Evolution, is that one of them?
Your soul is mine.
That's incorrect.
Sounds
Yeah.
right.
That is right. That is one of them.
That is a
but,
title, but it's not.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
wow.
right. I
Good
know
job,
one
Chris.
that is actually my favorite movie of his, and that movie is Event Horizon.
Impressive.
Yes, you got it.
Oh,
As soon
Yeah,
as you said
that's-
it's my favorite movie of his, I knew you were going to say Event Horizon, and I knew you were going to be correct
I
because I'm
forgot
looking at
about
the
that
screen.
one. All right. I'm not going to be able to guess a. That was one of them, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to guess another Resident Evil because I don't know the subtitles for any of them. But I think Mila Jovovich was in a movie called Monster Hunter recently that's also based on a video game. And I'm just going to assume that he must have directed that, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going to guess Monster Hunter.
Well, that's wrong.
Oh.
Damn. It's a good guess.
A nice
though, right?
guess.
All right. So, wait, this is the clue round. So you got to give
Is-
us a hint.
this is
for one
hints
of the
round?
movies.
Yeah, give us a hint.
Finish him.
Do you guys remember when I was talking about watching 3 Orlando Bloom movies in a row, and I talked about Kingdom of Heaven as well as Elizabethtown and one other movie?
Well, this
This
hint
is
doesn't
gonna
help
help Chris
Chris at all.
This doesn't help me, but that's all right.
Although, if you
Well,
can think of a third Orlando
Chris-
Bloom movie, Chris, that's
Chris,
probably
your
a good
hint,
one to guess.
your
here.
hint is that you are really, really getting quite warm with the Resident Evil guesses.
Yeah, I just don't remember all the various titles now
I know.
because they don't call them 1, 2, 3, 4.
Your hint is that there was a Resident Evil movie that had a similar title to an X-Men movie. I thought that was a good hint.
That is
I
a good
don't-
hint. I'm just
Okay.
trying to remember the Resident Evil names. Is there a Resident
It's
Evil
like-
Last Stand?
It's literally one word, and it's an X-Men character.
Oh,
Is that
damn it.
too?
Oh,
is that too?
Resident Evil Armageddon? Is that one?
The Emperor will not tolerate failure.
No.
Why would you say Armageddon?
Okay, Matt, you're up.
I'm out.
All right. I'm gonna say. Well, I want to get the other Orlando Bloom movie.
Yeah.
Is it The Three Musketeers?
That is absolutely correct.
Well done.
That is the movie I was talking about.
All right, so I'm going to guess
Hold on.
Resident Evil Apocalypse.
There it is.
Which is which one? Like the fifth?
It's the 2004 version. I don't know.
It's totally random. It's IMDb's just like, here's a bunch of movies for some reason. Wow.
What else has he directed that we didn't mention? I know he did a movie called Soldier.
Was there a really obvious movie?
Oh, did
we
he do
missed?
that with Kurt Russell?
The fifth one was Monster Hunter.
Is it Kurt Russell or is that Universal Soldier?
No, Universal Soldier was Jean-Claude Van Damme.
He didn't
Dolph
direct.
Lundgren.
Kurt Russell was Soldier.
Did he direct? He didn't direct Fifth Element, did he?
No,
That's not him,
That's
is
Luc
it?
Besson.
No, that's Luc Besson.
Luc Besson. Okay.
Yeah, Soldier I think is with Kurt Russell then. And yeah, I know he did.
He did
He
the
does
Death Race
mainly.
movies.
Oh, Death Race. That's the other big ones. Yeah.
Oh, right.
He also did Pompeii, which I've never heard of, but that came out in 2014.
I like Soldier. I like Event Horizon. Some of these movies aren't bad.
Yeah,
Pompeii
Event
kind of
Horizon.
looks like an action movie where they fight against the volcano.
Yeah.
Yeah,
guess
it's
that
got
makes sense.
Jon Snow from Game of Thrones as the star of it.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that
Is
makes
that what
a
it
lot of
is?
sense to me.
they fight the volcano like with their fists.
Everyone
Yes,
loses.
I think so.
That
Yeah.
sounds great.
Nobody wins.
They're just punching lava until their arms dissolve.
It's the one movie that makes you feel for the volcano.
All right,
man.
let's rate this movie so we can get the hell out of here. So, Chris, we just do like a summary of our feelings about the movie, and then we give it a score of between 1 and 10 Timothy Dolphins.
Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Upon watching this movie last night, I was impressed by a lot of things. And movies have come a long way in terms of effects work and acting and things like that. But I mean, you really have to give credit where credit's due. This is a movie that shot on location in Thailand. It's mostly practical effects that look good. There's some CGI, but this is sort of like the burgeoning years of CGI. So, I mean, thankfully they didn't overload this movie with bad CGI, and it's just kind of
Just wait until next movie.
exactly, yeah. I think the soundtrack is a banger. We did talk a little bit about the music, but not just the famous song, but like the whole rest of the soundtrack is great and like properly placed throughout the movie. I don't know if properly is the right word, but like it works for me. All the fight scenes are.
It's been about 5 minutes. Can we hype up to this?
What else? I think they did a good job of staying true to the characters of the game, and they did a realistic job of bringing those characters to life with their little backstories that they gave them. And I just really admire the look and feel of this movie, and I like that it's like a cool hour and a half or like an hour and 40 or something. It just zips by. It's mainly just fight scene after fight scene once you get into the meat of the movie, which is like the whole act 2 of this movie is just back-to-back fight scenes pretty much, which is great, and it works for what it is. Yes, it has some cheesy moments, but for the most part, I think it's pretty good. And I wish, as a franchise, that they were able to produce more sequels that were of this caliber. But unfortunately, as we'll learn, they did not. Having said all that, I think I have to give this movie 7 Timothy Dolphins.
All right. I can go next unless you want to go, Colin.
You want me to go? I'll go. To me, this movie is like one of those if you know things. Like if you know anything about Mortal Kombat or what this movie is or what it's trying to be, then you know. And that's when it's good. I don't know. It's really hard to even hypothesize the idea of what general audiences would think of this, because it's so wrapped up in that moment in time for me of being a kid who played arcade games and video games with friends, and this being the buzz of the entire elementary school and whatever, 4th or 5th grade or whatever. There's something about that experience that I can't really separate myself from to be like, oh, is this movie good? So I'm just gonna say that it's good, and I'm gonna give it an 8. So that's 8 Timothy Dalton.
Well, I was going to. The truth is, this movie is an artifact. It's not. It doesn't hold up. If you're younger than you guys are, if you weren't alive and conscious when this movie came out and you watched it today, you would be like, yeah, the fights are lame and the effects are lame, and the acting is subpar, and this just isn't a great movie. And thank God movies got better. And I think when viewed in that context, it's hard for me to give this a good score. And I was going to give it a 4 because as much as I like it, it doesn't hold up in a lot of important ways. On the other hand, it was groundbreaking in a lot of ways, both in the use of techno music, which I know was something that people thought couldn't work in this context, and eventually The Matrix is doing this, and it's like, oh yeah, of course they are. And the fight scenes, the wire work that really hadn't been done in Hollywood before this, just adapting a video game into a watchable movie was this is the first successful version of that. And the truth is the cast was somewhere usually between serviceable and good. And the sets were remarkable. The cinematography was great. A lot of the fights were shot pretty wide and edited together cohesively. So there's a lot to recommend about this. It's mostly in the ways it set the groundwork for better movies down the road and different other franchises to succeed. Unfortunately, Mortal Kombat did not succeed as a franchise in any, it didn't improve on this. But for nostalgia and for sort of the historical legacy of this movie, I'm bumping it up 2 points to 6 Timothy Dolphins.
You've all made really interesting points. Colin, you mentioned the general audience reaction to this movie, and I find my wife is a really great barometer for things. She missed a lot of big important nerdy things growing up. She didn't see Star Wars. She was not on the Game of Thrones train for a long time, Lord of the Rings, and so I subject her to my nerdy habits from time to time, and I could only get her to watch 5 minutes of this movie, and she's like, okay, all right, I'm done. So I think it is kind of an artifact of its time. I think I'll judge it though against its gaming community, where one is Timothy Dolphin Mario Brothers, and 10 being Timothy Dolphin Silent Hill. So I'll give this 6 Timothy Dolphins.
All right.
That's good scores, everybody.
Pretty solid.
I feel like we were a little generous, but still.
Yeah. We may have been.
Oh yeah, I was definitely
everything I think bad about the movie, then I think about another game movie. I'm like, oh, that's bad. Okay, this is gold.
Hey, maybe we're grading on a curve.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's always myself walking out of the theater after seeing this for the first time as a 15-year-old or whatever, and just thinking, wow, that was amazing. And that's always a little bit in the back of my head, even though I think it deserves a 4 or worse, but I can't do that.
I can't do it.
Video game movies are a special thing to their own. I remember seeing Doom in the theater and knowing it was absolute trash and having a blast.
Yeah. Well, see, I think sometimes that's the best way to approach a video game movie if you're a filmmaker, is you just make sure it's fun. It can be stupid. It's got to be stupid. It's a video game movie, or maybe it doesn't have to be, but just make sure it's fun and ridiculous.
I think that's what makes this movie stand the test of time, is that it is fun. It's you call it bad, call it cheesy or whatever, but in no way is it a dud in terms of excitement and entertainment. It moves at a pretty brisk pace. There's lots of eye candy like things to look at and fun stuff going on, and I think it keeps your attention for the hour and a half that it is.
Tune in for Mortal Kombat Annihilation though to find out what a dud looks like.
I will say I think the gaming community and like NetherRealm Studios and Mortal Kombat as a franchise now, because of technology, tells the stories and the cinematography and voice acting that they want to now in their games that this movie did back then because they couldn't as easily.
Yeah, I've been playing through Mortal Kombat 10
nice.
or whatever X
yeah.
this week or whatever it is, and I've been playing through the story mode, and it's kind of weird because it's just one fight after another, but they do a nice job of sort of stringing you along with an interesting kind of background story. It's way more information than I ever wanted to.
It's
but
so much.
between my rounds of button mashing when I want to give my thumb calluses a little chance to breathe, it's nice to check it out, and it is pretty interesting. One thing that we haven't talked about at all is how absurd it is that, and this didn't even occur to me when this came out because it just felt like, of course. But they made a Mortal Kombat movie with no blood and no on-screen deaths.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, how insane is that? Like, they made 2 Mortal Kombat theatrical released movies that neither one of them had blood or death in them. And the game
Scorpion
is like
dies on screen. He's just not human.
No, yeah, Goro is the only one who dies on screen. Yeah, but that's basically to keep the PG-13 rating. They couldn't have any humans die on screen, and they couldn't have any
the Sub-Zero
blood.
guy, that when he freezes that guy and he shatters into pieces, that guy dies on screen.
I guess it's
weird because like Resident Evil, another Paul W.S. Anderson film, which isn't too long after this, is rated R. Like people are getting cut up and eaten by zombies left and right.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because they knew that kids were going to be the audience to see this movie, and if they made it R, like no one would go see it.
Right. Whereas Resident Evil, I think, because of the nature of the game, probably has an older audience that would appreciate it. But yeah, I just think I think it's exciting that we're getting a new Mortal Kombat that actually will have all the stuff that Mortal Kombat is known for. I think it's bizarre this movie's as good as it is, missing what you could argue is the key ingredient that made the game famous and popular.
The fatalities.
Being R-rated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they got some in there.
That's
Scorpion lights on fire and blows up.
Yeah, that's great.
But I didn't see a single exposed spine in this entire movie.
Yeah,
which is very,
Sub-Zero
very
needed
upsetting.
to rip someone's head off. Kano needed to rip someone's heart out. I hope that happens in the new movie.
That'd be great.
God, it has to, right?
Yeah. All right, well, I guess that's the end. Chris, thank you very much for being a guest on our show. Do you have anything going on you want to plug, or maybe you could tell the audience like how to reach you on social media?
A couple of things. So first off, if you are a Mortal Kombat fan, I do performance capture, or I have done performance capture with NetherRealm. Most recently, Mortal Kombat 11, which came out a couple of years ago. So if you want to learn more about Mortal Kombat, go play that game. It is really fantastic and has a really huge story mode. Or play any of their previous games, because I'm in those too. So there's like a long legacy of Mortal Kombat and all sorts of gaming stuff.
Now, Chris, do you play, like, I don't know how motion capture works. Do you play like specific characters, or do you just kind of encompass like all the characters, or how does it work?
We are cast as different characters, because once you're scanned for a character, like you have to be that character, or it changes the data too much. So typically, like you mentioned Cabal, one of my first characters was Cabal.
Oh, hell
yeah. I've been Kung Lao, which was great. For Mortal Kombat 11, I was the Collector, which, speaking of like multi-armed creatures, that was a fun one. Probably my favorite role, though, was for the Injustice series. I was the Joker, and I mean, it's the Joker. Like, that's so much fun to be the Joker. So,
but you're not doing voice work, right? That's a separate deal.
The voice actors, especially like especially like Injustice, like that's the big DC names of, like Phil Lamar, Tim Daly, Tara Strong. Like those are all the big name voice actors that you are
They're
familiar
just
with.
interested in your body.
Yes,
They bring you in for that big 6'4", 240 pound frame.
I have 4 arms. It really helps. So
yeah,
I have I think I get typecast all the time.
I knew my deformity would pay off one day.
You know those street performers who like take mannequins and put them on like broomsticks and tie them to their hands and feet so that it's like 5 people dancing when they dance? Like,
Yeah.
Do you ever motion capture something like that? I don't know. I kind of lost my own train of
I don't think Colin understands what motion capture is.
We'll do a mocap
Or what street
episode.
performance.
Yeah, well, we'll just do a general performance episode. Outside of motion capture, I also do voice acting and acting here in LA. And then, as we mentioned at the top of this episode, I also have a podcast called the NerdOutcast Podcast that talks about nerdy things. You all were on the Predator episode that just released. I have an episode coming out with a good friend of mine from Hello from the Magic Tavern. If any of your listeners are comedy listening to Hello from the Magic Tavern, a good friend of mine is on that podcast, and he is coming on to my show to talk about Dark Souls, the video game series Dark Souls. So that episode will be coming out really soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any social media stuff like Twitter or anything like that?
Yeah, let me look at it real quick because I always forget to do this before a show. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Bashen. So
Awesome, and we'll put that in the show notes too. Cool. Yeah, we hope you had fun, and we'd love to have you back at some point in the future too.
I mean, I think we've got to do this Aliens versus Predator discussion at some point. So there's your 2 movies. There's your 2-movie trilogy.
Hey, there you go. Maybe. All right. Do we have any closing thoughts or any? Should we all scream Mortal Kombat in unison? Mortal Kombat!
Dun, 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 dun,
See, you're
dun,
singing
dun,
jock
dun,
jams
dun,
right
dun,
now.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah, y'all ready for this?
I thought you were unintentionally doing it. Johnny Cage.
Get out that t-shirt cannon.
Oh my God.